We're here to present on great transitions, more specifically transitions from apes to humans. My name is Ernesto Barquet Arrambide.
I'm Wilson Straussball.
I'm Davis.
I'm Eileen.
When I was a little kid, I used to love to climb on trees and eat fruits, apples and stuff, but mainly bananas. And because of that, my mom would joke around and call me her little monkey. And I always thought that was really funny, but then I started to think that maybe there was something to it. And lo and behold, there was, because there are a lot of common traits between different apes, monkeys, chimpanzees, and stuff like that, and humans, as we know now. And there's a lot of different traits because we have seen common ancestors. And our common ancestors from apes show up around the time period of the Miocene. And the earliest fossils of our own genus, the Homo, they're found in East Africa, and they're dated to 2.3 million years ago. And evidence suggests that our own species, Homo sapiens, evolved in Africa around 200,000 million years ago. Our last common ancestor is not purely defined or found, but scientists have a lot of different hypotheses around what it would look like. And the last common ancestor, the main hypothesis is that the physical characteristics are a lot more like the original or the apes we see today than the humans. For example, they would have an ape-sized brain and body, and their arms and fingers would be longer because of tree foraging as well as their feet. And if you can see the feet here, if you're living on a tree, you would want to have a foot structure like these that can grasp onto a tree, unlike the ones that we have that can't really grasp anything unless you train very well, I guess. And they would have sharper teeth, and they would walk quadrupedally, and their diets would be different. And the phylogeny shows the evolution. And with humans, you see different traits evolved that are different than from chimpanzees. For example, opposing thumbs, and our hands are built for more complex working. For example, a Rubik's Cube, or making a machine, a computer, or making tools, which have served us greatly with technology and the advancement of different cultures. Also, humans have a more erect posture. And now to tell us more about evidence.
All right. So what separates us all the way back at the beginning, 4.4 million years ago, bipedalism. I'm going to try to stick this on here and not knock anything over. So yeah, that's what it's said to be the most important derived characteristic. Really, it's what separates us from the apes, so to say, I guess. At least way back then. I mean, of course, as you go along, there's many more, but that's what really started it. So what's our best fossil evidence for this? We have the Laetoli footprints, which are here, and then we have the fossil Lucy, which is this one right here. So the Laetoli footprints were left behind 3.5 million years ago, and there's actually two of them. There's a larger set and a smaller set, and they run parallel. So it's like, I guess, like maybe like a mother and a daughter or something that were like walking. They're left in Tanzania. And what's happened is these scientists have performed experiments with them, and they've measured the distance in between each step. They measured like the pressure points, and they've also used the fossil Lucy. And basically what they've done is they've determined which way these early hominins walked. And there's two different ways. There's the flexed hind limb joints, or there's extended hind limb joints, which is either like a chimpanzee or like modern humans. The important difference here is that if you walk like a chimpanzee with the flexed hind limb, it's a lot more energy. You can't walk over long distances. This is why they live more in forest. This is why they live in the trees more. This is why they swing from branch to branch. You just not walking long distances. It requires a lot more energy. So after running the experiments and stuff, they determined actually, and it was kind of to their surprise because this was way back here, they didn't think the actual energy, like the extended hind limb joints developed until later on, but they determined that Lucy, who was the Australopithecus afarensis, which is this one, her right here, they didn't think she would have had that, and so she did, and that developed earlier than the scientists expected. So what else goes into bipedalism? There's a few things. The foramen magnum, which is got to do with posture, is how the head kind of connects to the spine. It's got to do with posture especially. Your pelvis development, larger thigh bones, and longer legs. And so I'm going to put that trait. Let's see where this goes. This one developed right here with Homo erectus. Homo erectus really means upright man. So Homo erectus was like the first one that was fully terrestrial, and so it had all these traits and stuff that we kind of see in us now. And it was, I guess, the best, at walking bipedally. So what's another important and key transition, I guess? That would be the development of the brain. Kind of like bipedalism separates us from chimps and stuff, the brain separates us from all of these other organisms. About 2 million years ago, the brain started developing really, really rapidly. It went from like 500 cubic centimeters to 1,500 in just 2 million years. And that all started with the Homo genus. So I'll put this here. We have a large brain with Homo habilis, and then we have an even larger brain down here with Homo sapiens. So the importance of a brain, it really defines humans. The ability to make tools, the complexity of the language, things like that. They're really specific to humans in general. And this is important fossil evidence for us to find.
So now we have just a small segment from Science Friday. It's a radio show here.
Hi, we're here live on BBC Science Friday discussing our latest topic, great transitions from ape to human. Today we have us a geneticist, Eileen Robertson, who's going to tell us about the differences between the phenotypic traits of living ape and human species, evolutionary drivers for these differences, and remaining gaps in knowledge. So first of all, let's get down to the basis of evolution, genes. How similar is our genome to that of a chimpanzee, for example?
Surprisingly similar, actually. Our DNA is 98.8% similar to a chimp's DNA.
Interesting. So then why do we look so different?
Well, there are several things to consider. First of all, if you really get down to numbers, you will see that because our cells contain about 3 billion base pairs, that 1.2% difference that we have with chimps is actually 35 million differences. That being said, these differences may have a large impact or no impact at all. It varies. Furthermore, with the 98.8% DNA that is the same, there can still be differences in the way those genes are expressed.
Will you explain that a little more for our viewers?
Sure. So the key phrase to note with this is gene expression. Genes work sort of like a computer. Some genes are turned on while others are turned off. This is why identical twins with identical DNA still look somewhat different. Some genes are expressed while others are not.
So why are some genes turned on and others turned off?
Well, this is where evolution plays a role. Depending on the environment, some genes are more favorable than others. The genes that are expressed in our phenotype are advantageous to our environment, and the same goes for chimpanzees.
What were the evolutionary drivers that caused this differential gene expression?
Well, there are several theories. One that I've studied is climate change. Over the course of history, there have been ice age cycles. Our archaic Homo ancestors expanded out of Africa during an interglacial period. This population adapted to survive in the out-of-Africa refugium. Around 600,000 years ago, a population of our ancestral species, Homo heidelbergensis, expanded across Eurasia and continued to stay there through entire ice age cycles. This allowed them to become more adapted to more northern environmental conditions. From here, a new species formed that we know as Neanderthals, who are adapted to the cold.
So where do we humans come in?
Well, the population of Homo heidelbergensis that remained in Africa is hypothesized to have evolved into Homo sapiens, or humans. Some data has shown that there was interbreeding between the Neanderthals and what scientists call AMH, or anatomically modern humans.
How did this interbreeding happen?
There are two possible scenarios that scientists have come up with. The first hypothesizes that the two populations may have created hybrid zones during their individual periods of expansion.
What exactly does that mean?
So, as the two different populations were expanding, they essentially ran into each other. They began to interbreed in these areas of contact, creating hybrids. The other scenario involves hybridization as well, but the reasons for interbreeding in this scenario are different. Scientists hypothesize the two populations interbred during periods of environmental disturbance, or if the species were rare at the time. Interestingly enough, the contact that occurred between the two populations may have included more than just a genetic exchange. It is possible that different behavioral traits and various forms of technology may also have been transferred between the two, providing evidence for the presence of stone tool industries at different times and places.
This is all so interesting. I think it's incredible that this genetic comparison of the living apes and humans are in agreement with the fossil evidence and evolutionary hypothesis. It seems like we have everything all figured out, but I know that can't be true. So what's left for us to research and discover?
Well, there's always more information out there. For example, we do not know the particular lineage that led to our genus Homo. Also, we're still trying to figure out the exact last common ancestor between humans and chimpanzees. With advances in technology, we are hopeful that we can come closer and closer to discovering these things and the other gaps in our knowledge. We are also hopeful that we can come to an agreement on the controversial hypotheses, like the evolutionary drivers of the ape to human transition. It is important to remember that science is progress, never a finish line.
You're right about that. Well, I think we're out of time, but thank you so much, Eileen, for joining us for this week's Science Friday. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
I'm taking another to the clap.
So as mentioned by Eileen, some of the main evolutionary drivers are climate change and gene expression. Climate change most likely initiated human evolution by forcing early hominids to adapt to a rapidly changing environment, driving them to develop new hunting strategies and survival techniques when there's a change in food, water, and habitat. Today we will look at the habitat, the teeth structure, the walking, brain size, and skull structure of the species ranging from our last common ancestor, the chimpanzees, all the way to our common form now, and how the environment and food influence these changes. Our earliest ancestor, which is the species, is not known, but we do know features about it, like it had ape-like features that included long arms and fingers, and had a grasping foot that allowed it to live in the trees, and had large and sharp teeth that allowed it to eat meat and most likely use as protection, and also it walked quadrupedal. An important driver of teeth and skull evolution was the food. We will see later how food influenced the teeth size. Moving on to the next species, Ardipithecus, which emerged around 4.4 million years ago, most likely in Ethiopia. Like our earliest ancestor, this species had a small brain and had ape-like features, and the small brain allowed it to not have any ability to make tools or any kind of language. And it walked, unlike the chimpanzee, this species walked bipedally, most likely due to an environmental advantage. And like the chimpanzee, this species had a grasping foot that allowed it to live in the trees and had smaller canine teeth, which most likely means it had more of a plant diet. Next, we move on to some of our earliest hominids, including the Australopithecus africanus, Animanus, and Afarensis, and they emerged around 4 million years ago in South Africa, most likely. And this species was bipedal, but used trees as protection and as a food source. And they're bipedal due to an increase in grasslands and savannas that allowed for the ability to walk farther in search of resources. And they had a small brain size, just like similar to the previous ones, so they did not have any tools, and so they were not able to hunt to have a meat diet. So they had, as you can see in this graph, they had a very large jawbone and increase in molar size, which are your back teeth. And they use these teeth to eat hard abrasive foods such as seeds, nuts, and leaves. Next, moving on to Homo erectus, which emerged around 1.8 million years ago. And Homo erectus showed an increase in brain size, which meaning they were more social and had the ability to make tools. And Homo erectus was the first to hunt in group, use tools, and care for each other. And the ability to hunt in groups added meat to their diet, which reduced the molar size, but they still had a large jawbone. And they're fully bipedal, which allowed for expansion to new habitats. Lastly, we have our own species, Homo sapiens, and this is just our common form, and you can see that in our big graph there. So now we have an animation to help y'all visualize the changes from our earliest ancestor to our present day form. So you see the reduction in the teeth size and change into a more human-looking form. You'll see the increase in the brow size and soon the increase in the jaw size. And then there will be a reduction in the brow size and a reduction in the jaw size back to what we had before, a human-like form. And that is it.
There's our great transition.
Any questions?
I read recently, I don't know if y'all found this or not, but I read it in the fall that there was a new, like possible ancestor between, I don't know if it's between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens or something. Have y'all read about that? It was like literally just found.
We left out, like, because the tree was like,
Oh yeah, no, I didn't mean like that you should put it in it. I was just wondering if y'all had heard about that or, okay. Yeah, just curious.
so we
Yeah,
found out.
I don't know. So between Homo sapiens and
I was wondering if y'all had read it. I wasn't sure where it was between, and I wasn't sure like if y'all knew whether it was, if they had like finalized that or not.
Under like Homo erectus and the Homo neanderthals, there's many like different
Okay.
subspecies
think-
between that. It's not just
the
one,
Homo
so-
heidelbergensis kind of diverged into both, like, if you were to look right here, this little point right here would be Homo heidelbergensis, and then it diverged to those that moved up north, and those were the Homo neanderthalensis, and then those that stayed in Africa, and those became Homo sapiens.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
Other questions? Talk to me about what we're seeing in that little graphic at the bottom with the,
This
it
one?
looks like something spine-based, but. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
this is, all right, so we're looking at the posture especially here. So you see the bent over gait here. Up here it's more upright. Up here it's really upright, but then you see longer arms in it as well. It's just like a bunch of different species and how they change and stuff. And different adaptations, longer arms and things like that.
Would you say that the footprints fossil form? Because I know like we talked about how much it takes fossils to form. Just was curious like how footprints actually got preserved. Do y'all know?
Footprint, I think footprints form the same way that actual fossils can form. And these, I think, it was like, this one might have been lava.
I think they're in like ash.
Yeah, in like ash. Yeah, footprints, I think, can form the same way.
Yeah, kind of just making a cast essentially. Right. So cool. Any others? If you okay, I'm gonna just throw like a question out there. Obviously, there isn't a correct answer to this. The way I'm setting it up. If you had to pick one derived characteristic that you think is absolutely, I mean, because all of them are very important, right? There are a lot of derived characters between the last common ancestor and our species today. Like, is there one that you think is more important than others in terms of what makes us human? That's just a personal opinion,
Us
obviously.
specifically as human.
Yeah.
I guess like you were talking about the brain function.
Yeah.
And like what
That would be
makes us human, probably the brain.
If you look at the brain, you can see the different lobes, the frontal lobe, occipital lobe, the parietal lobe, and the temporals, and all the lobes are enlarging it. You can see where the language centers and the audio receptors and image receptors of the brain, and when they enlarge them, they're able to create different synapses that go back and forward and create different things. So we were able to create different languages and understand different languages, and be able to observe and discover different sciences, and you're able to form mathematics, which can be the basis for a lot of technology, make technological advances, and just interact with people from the other side of the world, which wouldn't be possible without an enlarged brain. So it drives so much.
I know the question wasn't directed towards me, but I read in a paper or saw in a documentary recently that one of the big differences between us and Neanderthals was imagination, and that we had it and they didn't, and that's what like one of the big divergences.
Super cool. Well, I love it. You guys did a great job. Thank you.